Basically, first, let's start. Restraining orders and protection orders are the same thing. They're meant to keep the stalker, or violent person, whatever you would like to call them, away from the victim. That's what they're supposed to do. Now the judge, they can grant you a temporary or a permanent restraining order. It all depends on the judge's thoughts and feelings on the case. I was grateful to receive a permanent restraining order, and the judge told me that I could do whatever I needed to do to protect myself against this very violent man. Now, stalkers are supposed to be able to be arrested for breaking the protection order, but the victim has to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the order has been broken, and oftentimes this is very difficult to do. Just like in the case of Abigail Robertson. They didn't know for a fact that Marcus Hightower had slashed her tires. She couldn't prove that, but she knew it was him, and still the police did nothing. Now, one thing that I learned with that very scary experience of the gunshots outside my bedroom window is that a protection order can be used to get you out of your lease, which is a very important thing for people who are afraid for their lives. If you are ever in a situation and you do have a protection order and you believe that you're in danger, take it to your landlord and you can be released from your lease immediately. So now, what do restraining orders not do? They do not give you any right to privacy for your information. They give you no assumed identity to live under to keep the stalkers from finding you. And they give you no guarantee that the police will intervene on your behalf, as I told you before. Now let's talk about the dangers to restraining order holders that might not be so obvious, but are incredibly detrimental to their well-being. First, let's look at public records, voting records, telephone records, organizational membership. These are all things that they can use to find you. It's public records. It's very easy to find you, especially if they can use the internet. Then let's look at government and medical records. First, let's talk about police records. Private investigators often have friends in the department, and it's very simple to get police records if you have access to their databases, which I've known people in domestic violence circles that have access to these police records on many people. I've seen the records on my stalker through one of these people. On any police documents, they require by law that you give your legal residence. Now, what is someone to do if they know that their stalker has connections in the police department, or maybe using a private investigator? What are they to do? Are they supposed to break the law and lie about their residence? And now let's talk about medical records. They are required by law not to give out your private information, but there are certain instances where they are supposed to give all of their information. This is in the case of being sued. If you're being sued, the lawyer to the person who is suing you is given full access to your medical records, so they can know what clinics you go to, who your doctor is, where they are, how often you go, what ailments are afflicting you. Also, what's to stop someone if they know someone in a clinic that you go to from pulling those records because they're good friends? It's always possible. Now let's talk about utility companies. Most, if not all, utility companies will require that you give them your social security number to sign up. They're not legally allowed to, but they do anyway. If you refuse to give your social security number to them, they'll refuse you service. Do you want to live without electricity or the internet? I don't think so. So then these utility companies, what do they do with your social security number? Well, they turn around and they sell your information to data brokers, which we'll get into in a moment. You're not allowed to opt out of them selling your information. Trust me, I've tried. And when I have tried, they lied to me and told me that they weren't going to sell my information, that it was just used for verification. But my experience has shown that it was lies, because my information was still sold off to data brokers. Now here's where things get really scary. Let's start talking about data brokers. So who and what are data brokers? Well, they call themselves marketing firms, but if you scratch the surface of their glossy coating, you'll find a very slimy underbelly. A data broker's entire business is to buy and sell information about you. Their industry is a $156 billion a year industry. Pam Dixon of the World Privacy Forum did an extensive investigation into data brokers, and what she found disgusted her. She took her findings to Congress. In her findings, she found that these data brokers were selling lists of names. Now, you could buy a list of 1,000 names for $79. Now, the names on these lists, some lists were called rape victims. These gave you the name, the location, the type of rape, their ethnicity, everything. Now, there was another list that was entitled AIDS patients. There's a list for the elderly who suffered from dementia. And very scary, there was a list of police officers, their names, their addresses, their relatives, everything. 30,000 police officers. Think about how dangerous that could be for a police officer who has someone that they put in jail, and now that person's out of jail and they want revenge.